Hey budget gardeners, Vita Loca here. Join me today as we step out in the garden and go on a treasure hunt. So let's go. Have you ever heard the saying, one man's junk is another man's treasure? Well, that is not the case here. These are my treasures, and I'm willing to dig them up and share them with other people, and hopefully they view them as treasures as well. Part of weeding flower beds for me is digging up baby seedlings or plants that I don't want anymore for the purpose of moving them to other areas of my yard or for digging them up to sell as part of my backyard plant nursery. This time of year, while plants are still small, I like to go around in my flower beds and basically weed the flower beds. So there might be a seedling, some stray seedling that just appeared in a flower bed. That's opportunity to dig it up, pot it up, and put it out in my nursery for someone else to have. Or it's opportunity for me to put that plant somewhere else in my yard. I wasn't going to film this. I was just going to get out there and start digging, but I thought it might be fun for you to see the day in the life of Vita Loca, what is one of the many things that I do this time of year. I mentioned earlier I have a backyard plant nursery. In case you've missed any of the videos, I'll put a link to a playlist down below. But my plant nursery is open for business. It's been very busy, which is a good thing. And part of having a backyard plant nursery is to make sure I have enough stock of different types of plants. So join me, let's go around the yard and let's go on a treasure hunt. I gathered some basic things that I'm going to need. I just have a hand rake in case I need that. I also have pruners, my gloves, a small hand shovel, my handy dandy kneeling pad, another hand rake, lots of pots that are ready to be filled. In case you're wondering where did I get all these pots from that have soil already in them, they actually came from my backyard plant nursery. I had a biennial called English Lawn Daisy. I didn't realize it was a biennial. It already bloomed last year, so I had a whole section of plants that did not come up. Well, that's opportunity to fill these up with other plants. I also have a watering can. And yes, this used to be my children's, but they're in college now. So I also have a little bucket, and I'll show you what we're going to use it for in a little while. We are currently in the backyard. The backyard has some flower beds that look really pretty. It also has flower beds that are a little neglected, and I'll be working on them this year. We're going to be working right in this area. The reason I have this bucket is so I can empty out the pots. The soil that's in these pots has become compacted over the winter months. I want to loosen it up so that when I put my plants in there, the soil is nice and loose and the plants can go in very easily. For each plant that I work on today, I'll bring you in for a closer look just so you can see the plant and see what I'm doing. But I wanted you to see how big of a patch I have here. The name of the plant is Leopard's Bane, and it's a beautiful, very early spring blooming perennial. In fact, it's one of the first perennials that's not a bulb to bloom in my yard. This area of my yard, from here going in that direction, needs to be fully redone. And the way I like to redo my flower beds is actually to just empty them all out and have a clean slate. For me, it's just easier to visualize, and I can then place plants as I want it, rather than trying to work with what I have with the plants that are in a space and within a certain amount of space. I think it's just too hard. So I personally like to dig plants out, empty up a whole area, and then redo it. So with this particular plant, two things. Number one, I have plenty of this in my front yard in my bay window bed. Second thing, they are blooming right now. It's actually a perfect time for me to be selling this plant in my plant nursery because honestly, a lot of plants in my plant nursery have not woken up yet. And one of the big things you want to do if you do have a plant nursery is be offering things spring, summer, into the fall, something that's always blooming. That's the thing that people look at. That's the thing that people want to buy usually. So we're going to be digging all of these up and we're going to pot them up so that I can get them ready for sale. I like to sell my plants in small 3-inch pots. And usually I will just put one plant within a pot. If it sells this season, that's great. And if it doesn't sell, well, the one plant will turn into 2 plants. And then once it turns into more than that, I need to empty out the pot and divide the plant. And because I have so much digging to do and lots of plants to tackle, what I'll be doing in between is I'll always turn the camera off. I'm going to get all of these potted up, but I'll save one and I'll bring you in closer and I'll show you what it looks like. And of course, in the end, I'll tell you how many plants we end up with. It's actually the next day. I want to bring you behind me in my shed. This is my temporary holding place for plants that I dig up, and I want them to rest for a few days because they're going to be in shock, and I don't want them out in the sun. I don't want them in the elements, in the wind. So let me bring you inside and show you what I have in here. There are a total of 63 little Leopard's Bane seedlings here. They are just recovering from the transplant shock. I don't intend to sell them this year, but you never know. For right now, I'm just focusing on getting them to put more energy into their roots. This isn't even all of them. I still have a lot more to dig up, but I wanted to show you what's been dug up so far. Here we have another 10. I brought these down in the plant nursery because they're blooming. And since they're blooming, I figured they should be an easy sale for this year. So 63 that I have in the shed plus 10 more down here is 73 plants dug up so far. And I haven't even dug up all the plants yet. There's a whole section right there that has been cleaned out. I just want to show you how many more plants are left. There are a ton of little seedlings left to pull out. I will finish this job, but for today, all we're going to do is just pull out one, maybe two together, because I promised I would show you how to do it. And then the rest, I will have to come back on a different day. And when I say a different day, it will be soon, because I do want to start cleaning out this flower bed. But so many more seedlings left in here, which is great. So let's go ahead and fill up this 3-inch pot that I have. One thing I've learned about gardening is I think it's good to set goals. Try to be realistic with your goals. And if you don't meet those goals that you set, that's okay too. I had set out a goal to take out all of these plants in one day. It really wasn't a realistic goal given the amount of time that I had that day, but I'm happy with the amount of plants I was able to dig out. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just go after this one here that's blooming because I'm going to try to sell it this year. All I want to do is follow it down to the base. I have my small hand shovel and I'm just digging. I'm trying to be careful not to dig up a whole bunch of seedlings because if I disturb a whole bunch of seedlings in the area, then I really should be potting them up. So I'd rather not disturb all of them right now. And that gives you an idea of what the roots look like. If I had too many roots on the bottom here, I could always prune the roots. Some people are very afraid to do that. It's okay to prune the roots if you need to. There aren't a ton of roots here. They'll fit fine inside of the pot that we have. I just want to make sure that from this point down is under soil level. And see right there, that's the base or the crown of the plant. I want to make sure that the crown of the plant is above soil level. I've mentioned before, a lot of people like to buy small plants. I can charge less money for them. And not only that, when it comes to digging a hole and getting this plant into the ground, they don't need to dig a very big hole. And some people just want a small little plant like this. And if they want a big plant, then they can buy multiple of one kind of plant. Just backfilling at the base. And that just gives you an idea of what it looks like once it's in the pot. You just want to make sure a good amount of those leaves are above soil level. And that's always a good sign when you see new growth being pushed out in the center there. We'll just do one more and then we'll move on to our next plant because I don't know about you, I get bored very easily when I work in the same flower bed or when I work with the same plant. But I also know I want this job done within the next 1 week. That is a much more realistic goal. I'm going to use my hand shovel again, and I'm just trying to lift as much of this as I can without pulling everything out. If I end up pulling out more than one plant, that's fine. I'll end up potting that up because these are very close together. Whenever I do this type of job, I make sure that I put my plants that I'm digging up in the shade. I don't want them to be out in the sun. They're going under a lot of shock right now, so we want to minimize that. What I like about using these small little 3-inch pots also is they take up a lot less room in my nursery. And whatever plants don't sell this year, one plant will most likely turn into 2 plants by next year, maybe even more, which is a bonus. You might be wondering, why don't I put in a whole bunch more plants in here? I really could, but I don't know if I'm going to sell this year, so I don't want to go too crazy putting more than one plant in here because if I don't sell this one plant, it has room to grow. Behind me is my very messy raised vegetable garden bed. This bed's going to be seeing a lot of changes in the near future, but you can see it is full of weeds. But it's not just weeds. I'm going to bring you in closer and show you what treasures are in here. I spy with my little eye Baptisia or false indigo. There's one seedling and another right here, one amongst the weeds right there, and another amongst the weeds. I think this is a task that we can do together. Let's go after it. We did a good job with cleaning up the vegetable garden. The only thing left to do in there, now that we pulled out these perennials, is harvest some asparagus because it's exciting, it's ready to be harvested, and then weed out the vegetable garden. You'll notice when it comes to this plant, the great Blue Lobelia, I tend to put at least 3 or 4 plants per pot. The reason is I have so many of this plant in my yard that I can afford to do that. But if I don't have a ton of a certain plant, then I am more apt to only put maybe 1 plant per pot. And I know I say I don't have a ton. I do have a ton of this plant. But in terms of plants that are blooming right now that are sellable for this year, I don't have many that are blooming. I'm going to give everything a little drink of water. And then I'll end up placing these in my shed for a few days. And then after a few days, they'll end up down in my plant nursery. Here we are next to my garage. In this very narrow flower bed, I have a whole bunch of black-eyed Susan or Rebecca. But a number of years ago, before I put the black-eyed Susan in here, this bed used to be filled with a bleeding heart, the Fringed Bleeding Heart, and it's such a beautiful plant, and I have it in a number of places in my yard. Well, there are still a couple of plants that have popped up in this bed. It's not a bad thing, but I would prefer for this bed to just be my Rebecca or Black-Eyed Susan bed. So I'm going to take you in for a closer look, and we're going to go ahead and dig these out. I'll do the best I can when it comes to digging these out. There's a chance that when I dig it out, I end up digging out a Black-Eyed Susan along with the plant. If that's the case, I can always tuck it back in. So I'm just looking for the base of the plant, and I'm going to go ahead and dig down and then over. Now I'm just giving it a little bit of a tug. And I'm actually going to shake off as much of the soil as I can so I can see what we're working with here. I'm just going to push back down, so if we did take out any of the black-eyed Susans, they can go right back in. So we're just looking at the base here, and I can pull out any of last year's old material. That's these guys right here. This plant has been very popular this year, and I know why. It's just such a great plant to have in the landscape. Look how pretty the leaves are, and it's a plant that can grow in the sun or the shade, and it blooms spring, summer, and fall. Now that we've cleaned it up, I'm just trying to see if there's an area where I can easily divide this, because I should be able to get, I think, 2 plants out of this. But I want to be careful because the roots are very tender. There's a piece back here. I'm just going to try to tug, if I can, just a little gentle and pull on it. And as long as the plant has some roots on it, it should be fine. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pot this up. To be honest with you, I love this plant so much that I'm willing to even keep it for myself and try to find its forever home somewhere else in my yard. I'd rather let the roots establish themselves a little bit more. I wouldn't feel comfortable selling a plant where I just took a lot of the roots off. I want this plant to recover, and then over time, as the roots recover and grow, I can pop this somewhere in my yard. And you can see there's some new growth at the base, and that's perfect. That's about as deep as you want to plant that. This piece towards the back here has a tiny little piece of root to it. So I'm going to come right in here and I'm just going to cut. And we can pot this little one up. Some plants like bleeding root because their roots are just so tender. You have to be a little bit careful. But then again, when it comes to gardening, you also don't want to be afraid. I have this plant in many other places of my yard, so I feel comfortable dividing it down as much as I am right now. I feel that it will survive, it will be okay. I just need to make sure I give it time to recover by putting it in the shade and giving it some water. And I'm trying to be mindful. I don't want to bury it too deep. With this last piece that's remaining, I don't want to take my chances. We're going to go ahead and we're just going to pot this up as is. So yes, I've decided in this short amount of time as I've been potting this up, I'm going to be keeping these for myself. I mean, why not, right? They're a good sized plant and they'll look great tucked in somewhere else in one of my flower beds. And I realize there is a black-eyed Susan or Rebecca tucked in there with the plant. That's okay, we'll let it hang out. All right, we have a couple more freebie plants here that we're going to rescue. I am so excited. I've been eyeballing these for quite a while now, and I knew I wanted to get them. And this is so much easier doing it this way than dividing some existing plants that I have in my landscape. With this one here, I probably broke a lot of the root off, but there still is root here. So I'm going to plant this, and what might end up happening is where we just dug right here, another plant might come up next year, so that's okay. You'll have to let me know in the comments if you do something like what I'm doing. When you find freebie plants in your yard, do you dig them up and then move them somewhere else in your yard, or do you just weed them and throw them away? I'd love to know. I can't imagine I'm the only one that does this. Granted, I like to pot mine up, but I get it. Not everyone does that. You might just dig it up and put it somewhere else in your landscape. But let me know if you also do what I'm doing. I'm going to go ahead and clean this up a little. This is a small piece. Again, I'm going to pot the two of these plants together in one pot. A lot of people that come to my backyard plant nursery, when I mention about this plant and talk about bleeding heart, many people say, oh yeah, I have that plant. But the more I talk about it and actually show the plant, quite a few people realize, no, this is not the bleeding heart that they're used to. A lot of people are familiar with the old-fashioned bleeding heart. I will always say a lot of great things about, well, the old-fashioned bleeding heart is wonderful also. But because this bleeding heart is not as well known, I will always praise and talk about how awesome this plant is, because I really do love it. And that's what that looks like. Okay, we have a couple more to go after here. You can see we definitely should be able to pull this apart into a number of sections here. And what happens with the bleeding heart, notice that you have some plants here, but then it basically looks like it sends off almost like rhizomes or runners. So we can take our clippers and we can cut that one right there. I'm also trying to tug and just see if it pulls apart. So we have another plant right here. Technically, this little guy could get potted up into a small pot and it could grow into a big plant for next year. So I am going to take that apart and I'll just cut it. And that's probably true of many of the pieces that have roots on them, that if you took a piece that had a root on it, eventually it would create a new plant. And then you can see that this one right over here does have some roots going on. So I'm going to try to pull it and just see what we can get. So we have some nice roots on this piece as well. And then this one we'll just leave as is. One thing I really like to do is basically shop my own plant nursery. Yes, I do sell a lot of plants, but I also like to use my plant nursery as a holding bed because maybe I don't know exactly where I want to put these plants. So I can put these down there and think about it for a little while. It's very important when you're doing a project like this to give these plants time to recover. That's why I really like to give them a good drink of water and just keep them in the shade. Within 2 or 3 days, they will absolutely recover. They just need a few days. This year I'm working on a lot of different flower beds, changing things around. So it'll be really nice to have this as an option. I am going to finish potting all of these up, and when I'm all done, I'm going to show you what we managed to get potted up today. Much better. We dug out all the Fringed Bleeding Heart, and now this bed is uniform. It has the same plant, except I want to show you one thing around the corner. Are you looking at what I'm looking at? It's so pretty. This Fringed Bleeding Heart I have tried for years. It is tucked right into the wall here. So if I can one day, I'm going to try to come in here and see if I can pull this out. Otherwise, it will just stay here and be a happy little surprise. But do you see what I see? Maybe we'll leave it there for next year. I see you, little Fringed Bleeding Heart. Imagine going to the store and buying these. There are 10 really good, healthy bleeding heart plants here. Well, 9, and then 1 is just a small sprig. Nevertheless, that's what we did. We potted all of these guys up. Well, that's our treasure hunting for today. And believe it or not, this is what I do almost every day when I'm in my flower beds. When I'm weeding, when I'm cutting back plants, fertilizing, pruning, if I find a freebie plant, you better believe it. I'm going to dig it up. I'm either going to pot it up or I'm going to put it somewhere else in my yard. No matter what I do with it, though, I need to make sure I give it a lot of TLC because I'm putting it under a lot of stress. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it inspired you in some way. Next time you're in your garden and you're weeding and you find a freebie plant, I want you to think of me. If you have any questions or comments, please drop them down below. And until the next video, make it a great day with gardening.